I would like to welcome Dr. Elizabeth Bernat, the Director of Academic Advising here at SUNY Plattsburgh, who of course has a lot of interaction not only with first-year students generally, but with first-year students who are struggling, first-year students who are undeclared. And since she was not able to join us at this event today, I wanted to make sure that we got some of her wisdom to share with the Cardinal Foundation Seminar instructors. So we're just going to have a quick conversation about what students are like in these post-pandemic years, what we can do to help them, and any ideas that Elizabeth may have for us. So thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. As you said, Wendy, I see them coming in. Our office interacts with almost everyone who's coming in new. And we also see them, unfortunately, on the way out by withdrawal or by academic dismissal. So I'm happy to share what I know or what I think I know.
That's great. That's great. So what are you noticing about these incoming students that you're working with? And especially, we're all messed up by the pandemic. How are they different than the students that had a normal high school experience?
Sure. Some of the things we're noticing, and we're recording this now at a perfect time, that it's halfway through the first year orientation sessions, and we're noticing a couple things, and some of them are positive, some are neutral, and some are something to take note of. We are finding them to be very excited. They are excited, especially desirous of making friends. We've been noticing the joy on their faces when they have any interaction as part of a group. We are noticing in the registration lab, it's like an experiment down there. We are noticing quite a number of things when they are registering for classes with our guidance. We are noticing their logic and their emotions associated with it. We're noticing that students are choosing face-to-face classes, and the difference between pre-pandemic times or even peak pandemic times to now is that when faced with the option, not only are they choosing face-to-face largely, when it comes down to it and it's a web section or nothing, they are resistant to the web section. We have found that though they are quicker to frustration and overwhelm in the lab with any predicament, so they and we, quite honestly, are quicker to frustration these days. They are incredibly responsive to any act or statement of caring, kindness, reassurance, and quick to stabilize after that kind of vibe. They're picking up on our vibes easily. And they are very approval seeking. By saying it's okay, many of them are realizing it's okay. I think one of the most powerful observations that I had, and Kelly and Megan in advising as well, is that they are looking to academic professionals, their faculty, their chairs that they're meeting with, for guidance, even the most elemental kind of guidance. Now, this is nothing that has changed. Students are always looking for guidance. But before, in the computer lab and when we were working with them, when giving them choice, they kind of wanted to do their own thing. Like, let me search for classes on my own. Let me decide. Now, more than ever, they're asking immediately, well, what would you do? Or what should I do? Or is this good? Would this be bad? And that places us all, and especially you as CFS 1889 instructors, in a really powerful and privileged role. If I had a couple more thoughts that just came to mind, and that is, in terms of receiving and processing college information. Students more now than before the pandemic have more immediate concerns. They are way less prone to have regard for their futures or anything beyond the present moment. And therefore also there's no urgency with them. And I'm talking about the middle of the bell curve now, obviously. No real urgency to attend to college information. And we in fact learned in the first session by talking with a few students that they have accessed nothing associated with it, except for them signing up for orientation. They're looking for a shepherd, very willingly, members of a herd. And I do not want to use the metaphor of sheep for what it implies, but they are members of a herd willing to be led and waiting to be led.
Wow. Interesting. Okay. Right at the beginning, you said something about observing their logic regarding the computers, regarding the registration. Can you tell me a little bit more of what you meant by that?
Sure. We spend a lot of time on conveying what the content of a course is and what its value to the student is. And that's so necessary. Oftentimes they're looking for time of day, and they're looking for how interesting it might be. Not even necessarily that this would enhance their program of study, but does it fit well?
Right. Okay. So their priorities are maybe not what we think
Correct.
our priorities would
Right.
be.
Not yet. Not yet. They'll get it.
Okay. So that's a point that I guess the CFS instructors can hit. I mean, and it's a part of this is what's the purpose of getting this college education, and what are you trying to put together in this huge collection of classes you'll be doing? Not that I never have a class on Friday afternoon. That's right. But that I have learned something that's going to be useful in the world.
Yes, that's absolutely right. We used to reserve, even a decade ago, we used to reserve that kind of philosophy for our upper division courses. But more often now than ever before, some students are withdrawing because they see no value now. And that's sad.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you. Now I know, and you mentioned that you've been working with first year students who were facing academic dismissal this spring. Do you have any insight about what their particular struggles were, and what kinds of things might be done to help catch them before they're facing dismissal?
Yeah. If we could only have a breakout session for an hour on this question alone. I draw my observations, reflections about student struggles from 4 sources. First, our office sees nearly every college withdrawal for personal non-medical reasons. I have read every appeal, and this year I think I read 163 appeals. Now, most were granted, but I read 163 appeals. And doing so was kind of like being an academic therapist, right? Hearing a story, but if I read 40 in a day, it's like having 40 short appointments like that. It was really something. I draw also from our interactions with new students going through orientation, as I mentioned before, family emails and calls. And then, of course, the work I do in intervening for students who are referred to us who are really struggling. As far as why they're withdrawing, we always have a few here and a few there of military illness. I didn't want the booster requirement, microaggressions, roommate problems, pregnancy, and my major that I want is not here. The top 4 collections of reasons include closer to home. Now, closer to home is not one thing because it's often related to other factors. So closer to home, sometimes related to finances and happiness. Of course, you've got mental health, both clinically diagnosed, but also self-diagnosed, that they are feeling sad, mood disorders, and so forth. So mental health, sad, anxious, financial, family, or other struggles, and or other trauma. And a category that is increasing, and that is don't like it here. Now, some people don't like it here because the town is too small, it's cold, those have happened. That will happen in every institution. But uncaring, not enough to do, don't like college overall, or something that they say makes college unfulfilling for them. You can just see that they don't have joy, or they're not feeling it. Those are the key reasons why students are withdrawing. And then sometimes they transfer. But the closer to home thing is, we've seen, it was not just an uptick, as we say, it's been a drastic increase. What are they saying in their appeals? I can name the big 3, and they are in a different arrangement and prevalence now than they were before the pandemic, for sure. The first is not seeking help or utilizing resources. The second is a broad brushstroke, not coping effectively with stress, trial, and that includes mental health, any family thing at all. Before, it used to be my parent passed away, or there's something significant like that. Brothers in prison for drugs. That still happens, but now it's any family member. COVID introduced a whole assortments of family stressors and dysfunction, not seen before. I mean, at unprecedented levels, I should say. And because of this, students were coping by completely disengaging. And you as instructors know full well you've seen an increase in absences. The coping mechanism now is complete disengagement, shutting down, losing hope, and easily triggered. The third I'll mention is not having a planner, a flow, a work ethic, and never recovering from it. So then that leads to disengagement as well. The reason I see what I see most when someone refers to me a student who has some apparent pervasive issue, which either the faculty will say or the student will say of themselves that they're a hot mess. So what are the hot messes about? Primarily one of 2 situations. And one of them is a slow suffering where the student retreats inward and says nothing to us. Whether they're offered services or not, they just begin, there's like this little flicker of discontent or lack of joy or something, and then it just leads to a slow suffering. And finally we can talk about it. And the second one is that they've messed up in some way, and that has led to a cycle or a spiral actually of shame, depression, denial, and otherwise hiding. So those are some of what our office and I specifically, having read the withdrawals, compiled the reasons for withdrawal and the reasons for dismissal as the key sources of struggle.
So I was just thinking, kind of getting sociological, which of course is not my field.
No, please.
But how much is there a pandemic response of everything's really horrible, so my troubles aren't going to matter to somebody, or I just need to suck it up and keep going? Or then another side of that is a lack of persistence to do difficult things, because I know, seeing my own kids in high school in the pandemic, it was just kind of like, whatever, get something in, it's fine. Or if you can't come, it's okay, because everything's, there's just this sense that the rules don't even matter anymore.
Mhm.
And does that kind of play into this difficulty some students have with adjusting or coping?
I think it resides in the fact that they don't know how. Actually, two parts of it as I think about it. And I wish I could think and come back to you, but I think there's two parts of it. And one may be, no one else is feeling like I am feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not normal when they're completely normal. And the other is, I don't know what to do with this and how to get out of it.
Right.
There are things we can do as instructors and faculty and just as humans to each other to help people out. But we in the classroom anyway, we're often extending deadlines for things
Mm-hmm.
and never really asking what's going on. And
Right.
and we often, when we think something's up with a student, we suggest that they go somewhere for help with it,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is, rather than bring the issues to the forefront and explain how normal it is and explain how I, in front of you, cope with these, that I experience these things, whatever it is.
Right.
And how people cope in college, in their families, in their work life, and that it's not specific to college students or their generation. Mm-hmm. I think that's really at the crux of it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I have so I've in my regular, not my CFS, my regular class, I have these weekly online quizzes. Mm-hmm. And I say in the syllabus, they're 2 no questions asked 24-hour extensions, because something's going to happen, you're going to miss it, and it's fine. But from what you've just said, I'm wondering if it should be a questions asked extensions. Tell me what happened, I will give you the extension, but give them that window to say, I overslept, or whatever happened with it, to give them the chance to recognize what tripped them up, instead of just saying, oh, okay, I've got a free pass, I'll move on, and no one will ever know.
Yes, that's brilliant. One of the things I learned by Zooming with students who were under review this time, there were some cases I just wanted to talk to them. And I learned some things at a deeper level. And one of them was the reasons for student irresponsibility, lack of submitting things, lack of follow-up, are often very deep. And they manifest as irresponsibility or other behaviors. And I'm not in any way suggesting that faculty take on the role of therapist. That's not even that's not even a thought. But oftentimes when a student doesn't do something they're supposed to do, and either we extend deadlines or we talk about it, we incorporate the word but. So I understand, I've heard you have this, that, and the other issue, but or if there's that tone, that's the bottom line.
Mhm.
And the thing is, they do have to perform in some way. And I've had a much more success in intervening with students by choosing to use the word and. It's a small thing we can do. So I hear that, this, that, and the other thing are up for you. And let's find a way together to get help with that thing. Because I know people, right? She said, I know people. And I'm going to help you plan. And I'm going to help you with that. And I'm going to help you succeed in this class. Very different outcome.
Good. Yeah, that's a good tip. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay. One of the things, well, it kind of goes back to the first point you said about why people withdraw from college, the non-medical withdrawals, and that they wanted to be closer to home. I wonder if you're seeing any differences in the relationships that students have with their families and with their peers, and how that affects their academic success, and if students need to be kind of supported and weaned away from their families, or what are you seeing?
Wow, yeah. Big one. And I'm saying wow because this is one of the areas in which I've changed the most. Mhm. I no longer use antiquated terminology like helicopter parents and lawnmower parents and co-pilots.
Hmm.
The pandemic changed all of that, because they were home with their families, and that's for better or for worse. So there's much higher levels of enmeshment within families. And so you already know, speaking as a budding sociologist, as you did just a few moments ago, both parents and peers are powerful forces in Generation Z's lives, as they should be, right? Powerful forces. That makes students very suggestible to one thing, right? And whatever that one thing is, they only have to hear it once. And especially I've seen to older siblings. Very powerful siblings are. And again, for better or for worse, there are older siblings who advise students, and that's become a little bit of an issue. So, they're safe with that. They're safe again, even if dysfunctional, they're safe. And so, decisions, if not made by parents and peers, are often academic success decisions are not made by a careful weighing or a digging that takes effort. The question you raised about family support and weaning is the area where I've made the biggest change, and I'm still in the process, but I don't think we no longer need to wean students away from these connections in any intentional way. In fact, I acknowledge the family's role more and more now. Like in my conversations with advisees and with other students I work with. As an advisor, during my first meeting with them, I always ask questions that tap family system. If they're that connected with them, I have to acknowledge that as a primary network for them. I ask things like, and I take it from there, depends on their first answer, but I might ask about their moving to college or adjustment to college, and I'll ask, who in your life supports you? and is most engaged and interested in your education and what you do. And I learn whether it's family, mentor, someone else, and I learned something about whether they're first gen or, raised not by a parent. I ask things like, what does your family have to say about your major and your career and your direction? I want to know what I'm up against.
Mm-hmm.
I might ask students, this always yields some interesting things. What kind of conversations did you have about college with your family before you came? What are you talking about now? What do you tell them and what do you not tell them?
Mm-hmm.
I learned a lot about their first line experience. So, and when we're done with our first interaction, like, I want to reinforce that they did a good thing by talking to me. At least I think they did a good thing by talking to me. And I say, you know what? Because remember, back to what we talked about a little bit ago, they're looking for reassurance that they did good, and I'll say, you be sure, as long as they told me they had family support, you be sure you tell your family that you met with your academic advisor. Okay, then the family knows they have them. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that we came up with a plan or whatever it is. They'll be so pleased to know that you're taking charge. Some of them say, yeah, they're always on my back. You tell them, I've got this. Okay. If you tell them that they don't have to ask you, you tell them that somebody here is watching out for you and that I think that they raised a great person. Changes everything.
Nice.
So I guess to answer your question, I believe that the weaning, so to speak, is a more organic process that they do if they feel that they have more than one person who is watching out for them. If they're so attached to home because of the emotional experience that they have, if they meet people like advisors and faculty who exhibit any kind of kindness, warmth, care, humor, guidance, compassion, that trust can develop. So I'm not looking to replace them. I am joining their network. It's a lot easier to overcome homesickness if they're filled with people here who provide social ties, guidance, and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. I hadn't thought about that kind of an approach, and that conversation about who supports you and what your family said. I can see that working really well in a CFS, in small groups of students, and you give the instructor a chance to go around and listen to the conversation, but mostly let the students kind of talk to each other and see, oh, I'm in this group of people that are going through something that's similar, or things aren't as bad for me, or my family's really messed up. I never realized, my entire adult life has been realizing that.
When we speak, for years, we've spoken about meeting them where they are. Well, that's where they are.
Yeah. Wonderful. Okay. I think we could probably talk a lot longer, but we have other things to get onto in our days and in the workshop. So I'm going to stop our recording and we'll finish up. Thank you very much for doing this with me.
You're welcome. My pleasure. And I'm always available to you.
Wonderful.
Just say the word.